everybody, Graham here from therecordingrevolution.com with another 5 minutes to a better mix tutorial. We're looking at 31 mixing tips in 31 days. And today I want to talk to you about getting your snare drum to cut through the mix. As we've looked at EQing, I've talked to you about subtractive EQ. If you haven't seen that video, go watch it a few days earlier. Subtractive EQ means I prefer to cut frequencies out of my tracks for them all to fit together nicely than boost. Okay, it's a rule of thumb. It's not hard and fast, but that's the way I like to work. That being in the picture, when it comes time to mix and you've got something like a snare drum that needs to cut through and be punchy, if you use subtractive EQ on the rest of your tracks to free up space for your snare drum and it's still not quite cutting through the mix, maybe it works for most of the song but not for a thicker part of the song, then one thing you can choose to do instead of boosting a frequency with an EQ is to add some harmonic information to the track that isn't already there. And you can do that by using a simple distortion plugin. Let me show you what I mean. In most of this song, I feel like the snare drum is working. Then it builds into a bridge and the guitars get a little more electric, a little more thick, and it's just a little chaotic, and I don't want the snare drum to completely flatten out and disappear. Listen to the transition and we'll see if we can fix it. Okay, it sounds fine, but for me, I kind of want that snare drum when it builds into the bridge to really cut through, boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. And I don't want to boost anything because I don't really want to hype the sound. So one thing I can do is simply come over to my snare track here and grab some kind of distortion, lo-fi plugin, something that makes your track sound like crud. That's the idea. You want something that will mess it up. Now, the key here is let's choose Lo-Fi in Pro Tools. This is an old school plugin that I never used because it's really good at making things sound bad. And I don't do a lot of electronic music where I want to have a crunchy sound, but instead of pushing this type of plugin or a distortion plugin or amp modeler plugin to the limits where you just add grossness to it, you can add some subtle distortion to the mix. So let me show you what we're doing here. I'll just zero in on the drums. That's with nothing. You know, what you are hearing here in solo mode is a little more aggression, it's a little more metallic-y sounding. I don't think it sounds nice, but it increases and boosts its volume a little bit and gives it a little more grit. What really matters is, does this help the snare drum cut through the dense guitars here? So let's take a listen to it a little further on here in the bridge. So it's a dramatic difference in the mix, right? When I bypass it, it sounds choked and thin, and really it's getting buried. But when I bring the distortion back in, the snare drum feels and sounds a little fatter, a little grittier, and of course it's punching through the mix. Now you could dial it back a little bit with this distortion knob, maybe this saturation knob. Again, this is just a really simple lo-fi type plugin that if you crank it up and turn down the sample rate, you can make something sound horrible in an instant. But just a touch of distortion might be the trick to get your snare drum at a really dense part of a mix or an entire mix to sit nicely without having to boost the frequency that's already there. You can add some harmonic content that doesn't yet exist on your snare. Hope that helps you guys. Again, this is Graham here at the recordingrevolution.com. Stay tuned for more 5 minutes to a better mix videos coming your way.